Hey everyone, welcome back to the Anderson Bros Outdoors. I'm Jake, and today I want to have a discussion. I don't normally get into politics. There's a couple of things that I like to avoid, especially when having conversations with friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, whatever. Any confrontational subjects, right? And really the primary subjects are politics, religion, and personal or professional aspects of life, such as how you live your life, how I live my life, money, things like that. With that being said, one thing that I would like to touch on is the recent move Traxxas made by essentially, seemingly out of nowhere, sending a bunch of legal requests and really closing down through service providers, having Shopify shut down websites or having data center hosting a web server shut off access to that web server, things of that nature. Legal suit or series of legal suits to numerous manufacturers of aftermarket Traxxas parts, essentially shutting them down. It almost seems like it's the URL, it's not actually the web page, it's just inside of the URL. So what they did is they scanned the internet, scanned a bunch of websites and looked for the URL of Traxxas or one of their products in it and shut that website down. But some of these websites include hobby shops that actually are dealers of Traxxas, which is kind of funny. I digress from that. The conversation I want to have is, where do you think Traxxas is coming from? So feel free to comment below. I'd really like to have an intelligent discussion here. There is no bashing of each other. Please don't do that. Don't get in a heated debate. This isn't the end of the world. There's no need to get all wadded up over a conversation, so let's not do that. However, from my perspective, I would tell you that looking at last year's content on YouTube and the RC community as a whole, the most videos watched involved Traxxas vehicles, right? Whether it was on-road, off-road, and everything in between. From 18th scale all the way up 5th scale, Traxxas is really one of the most viewed products on YouTube. And then there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the first reason is that they are like a bull in the china shop in terms of sales. They push and push and push all these hobby shops across the United States with good incentives to sell Traxxas parts and Traxxas vehicles. So I don't know exactly what the markup is on the kits, but I can tell you it's quite a bit. Meaning that a truck, for example, and I'm not going to use a Traxxas truck, I'm going to use a made-up truck that I will say I designed. So we'll call it the Anderson Mobile 5000, right? So I have the Anderson Mobile 5000. It is a on-road truck, and it costs me $200 to manufacture and sell it. Meaning that all of the R&D time, all of the tool make time, you do have to make parts or dies to build the vehicles. You have to make the parts to do the injection molding if you're not purchasing from a third party, things of that nature. So we'll just say, overall, said and done, I need to sell at least 1,000 trucks at $200 a truck, which would essentially make me break even and allow me to continue to make money after 1,000 trucks, so it's all profit at that point. Not necessarily. There are a lot of other variables. Just bear with me. So, with that being said, if I sell the truck at $200 to my dealers, and the dealer turns around and sells the truck at $400, or if I sell the truck to my dealers at $250, and my dealers sell them for $400, they're getting $150 profit on that truck. So basically what that means is that they're making $150 per sale, which is huge, right? It is and it isn't. So how many trucks do you think that they're going to sell a day? Probably very few. So they need to be able to keep the lights on, which is why the costs are so high for a lot of these things, is the manufacturing and mass sales of a product get a lot cheaper as you sell more of them. However, in order to sustain business, you have to be selling things and making money. So a small mom and pop shop in Andersonville, with a town of 20 people, they're probably not going to be able to sustain a luxury or any kind of quality of life, because they're not going to be selling a new truck every day. And even if they were, at the $150 margin of the RC shop, I mean, that's not sustainable to live on, right? I mean, making $150 a day is just not adequate. So circling back to the original point, right, is that Traxxas has made this monopoly, and they have essentially pushed a lot of hobby shops in order to stay in business. They've pushed their product, which isn't bad. I mean, Traxxas doesn't have bad vehicles. I think that they have some things that are maybe not as well thought out as others, but you know, their vehicles are pretty decent, right? I mean, they're not terrible. Probably not the best thing that money can buy, but for the price range, we'll just say middle of the road. High middle of the road. So going back to the original topic, Traxxas not wanting these third-party vendors to supply parts for them, it seems a little outrageous. One of the things that I do understand from a business ownership and corporate side of things is that their newest 18 scale truck, right, the TRX4M, they released it, and then, I don't know, a series of weeks, maybe months later, they released all of these aftermarket parts for it. Well, the aftermarket parts are decent. You know, there's some brass wheels. They've got different transmission gearing and things of that nature. They have different wheels and tires combinations. And so I could understand that they may not want other manufacturers selling wheels and tires and, you know, gears or whatever for that truck, because they want to generate the revenue from their aftermarket parts. The issue with this is that their aftermarket parts kind of suck. Plastic wheels, I'm not a fan. Traxxas deliberately made their TRX4 wheels and tires a different size than all of the other 24th and 18th scale wheels and tires to be able to sell you dedicated or proprietary parts. They did this with other things too. ESC and receiver are all in one. Their light kit is proprietary. It's the way of the corporate America, which is understandable. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I'm just elaborating those that may not be in a corporate job, right? So I guess my point here is that I can understand why Traxxas is doing what they're doing, but at the same time, they run a very large risk of pushing people away. The issue with this is that there are 2 hobby shops where I live in Kansas. There are 2 of them. Both of these hobby shops mainly push Traxxas products. And so if you go in there, you're not really going to get support for much of anything else. And where that causes a problem is now the community, if they want to see something before they buy it, which is why a hobby shop exists in the first place, right? Or try it out, maybe they have a demo model. They can't actually do that unless it's a Traxxas vehicle. They sell other things as well, but they predominantly sell Traxxas. So at this point, you know, Traxxas has cornered the market in my town, right? They probably cornered the market in a majority of the other towns. And really where the issue becomes an issue is that, as I've discussed between the Axial and the Vanquish, the RTR and the SCX10 Pro, the problem is not the trucks. The problem is not that the SCX10 Pro is missing parts or is whatever the case. The problem is that it costs an arm and a leg. Like, you're getting a bare bones builder kit for $430. And so the issue with Traxxas doing what they're doing is they will become a monopoly, and they will be able to have cornered the market and raise the prices, or continue to raise the prices, with virtually no opposition. And the reason that they can do that, hypothetically, they have contracts with all of these RC shops that only allow them to sell Traxxas, or a majority of their sales be Traxxas. So, you know, it is what it is. I think that if this goes to court with all of these small businesses, Traxxas has the money that they should have everything tied up in a nice bow. So if these small businesses start pushing back and Traxxas kind of falls back, then what they're doing is not necessarily 100% legal. However, if these small businesses start pushing back and Traxxas takes a firm stand and these legal suits go to court or the Supreme Court or wherever, right, then it's a very high likelihood that Traxxas will win because they have the money to pay very expensive lawyers. So my point here is this: Traxxas is either helping themselves significantly by making a statement, or they're hurting themselves significantly by angering a lot of end users like me and you. What they have done is they have single-handedly taken, a lot of these small businesses, and they have put them out of business temporarily or even potentially permanently because they have stopped sales or they've stopped traffic to their website or whatever the case may be. Some businesses may recover, some may not. How many followers do these businesses have, right? I mean, you have some of these small businesses, they have cult followings that are around the world. Hundreds of thousands of viewers, subscribers, likers, whatever on social media. I guess the point of the story is, what does everyone think? Do you think this is going to hurt them? Do you think this is just a publicity stunt? Where do you see this going? The question remains, how do you guys feel about it? Feel free to comment below. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.